You're a good-looking guy, you know that? The words hit like a wrench slipping from a toolbox, clanging through an empty corridor, loud, startling, impossible to brush off. Jamal Hayes froze mid-motion, a flathead screwdriver still pinched between his fingers. The bedroom light overhead had just blinked back to life, its soft amber hum filling the space. He glanced up from his work, eyes narrowing as he met the gaze of the woman leaning casually in the doorway. Lila Bennett, 32, stood barefoot, her soft blue dress hugging her frame with effortless grace. Her arms were crossed loosely, her face a mask of unreadable calm. Jamal straightened. Thanks, he said, his voice caught in a tangle of surprise and wariness. It wasn't the first time a client had tossed him a compliment, but this was different. Her tone wasn't playful or coy. It was direct, unguarded, like she was stating the weather, and that threw him more than anything. He wiped his hands on the rag tucked into his tool belt and stepped back from the light switch. It was a loose ground connection, he explained. Old house, older wiring. I swapped out the terminal and added a surge stabilizer. No more flickering. Lila gave a single nod, but didn't budge. That's good. A pause. You always explain things like that. Calm, professional, like it's second nature. Jamal coiled the old wiring into a plastic bag, choosing his words carefully. Clarity matters when it's someone else's home. That earned a smile from her. Not wide, not dazzling, but subtle, approving. The silence that settled wasn't tense, but heavy with something unspoken. Lila finally stepped into the room, her barefoot steps silent on the dark hardwood. Got time for lunch. Jamal blinked. Lunch. There's a spot 2 blocks over. Best smoked turkey club around. My treat. He hesitated. Every instinct, his upbringing, his work ethic, his caution, screamed to decline. Never mix personal with professional, never blur lines, especially not with a client whose house had a 3-car garage and a driveway longer than the street he grew up on. But she stood there, waiting, not pushing, just asking. I appreciate it, but I've got another job in an hour, he said, half truth, half shield. His next job wasn't pressing, but his unease was. Lila tilted her head, studying him, not judging, just curious. Another time, then. She extended her hand, catching him off guard again. Thanks for the fix, Jamal. He shook it. Her palm was warm, her grip steady, not the delicate clasp he'd expected from someone who lived like this. As he packed his kit and left the room, he felt her eyes on him. Not predatory, not even flirty, just present, like someone watching a story unfold and seeing something true for the first time. His truck sputtered to life, the AC wheezing under the North Carolina heat. As he pulled away from the mansion, the name Bennett lingered in his mind like a logo stamped in steel. Merging onto Providence Road, he caught himself checking the rearview mirror, though he couldn't say why. She wasn't going to chase him down. By the time he reached his next job, a single-story ranch with chipped paint and a cracked front step, he'd mostly pushed the moment aside. Mostly. But when he reached for his phone to log the job, a notification popped up from an unknown number. The preview read, "This is Lila. In case you change your mind." He didn't open it. Not yet. He pocketed the phone and got back to work. Jamal Hayes wasn't a man who chased daydreams. Raised by a single mother who juggled 2 jobs and still taught him to solder copper pipes by 10, he believed in the tangible, showing up early, double-checking voltage, doing it right the first time. His hands were steady, his mind sharp, and his heart? It stayed out of the equation. But Lila's voice, her unguarded stare, the way she'd said those 5 words so plainly, it chipped at something, a tiny crack in the armor he wore daily. That night, sprawled on the couch in his small apartment above a barber shop, the city's hum muffled by old windows, he scrolled through his messages. Lila's name sat there. Just her first name, just 7 words. He tapped to reply, paused, deleted, tried again, then sighed. Maybe it was just lunch. Maybe it was more. But Jamal Hayes played it safe, and he hadn't made it this far by mistaking kindness for something deeper. He powered off the phone, rolled over, and told himself to let it go. But he didn't. Not yet. 3 days later, he still hadn't replied to Lila's text. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know how. Every time her name lit up his screen, his thumb hovered, hesitated, and retreated. What could he say? That he was flattered? That he couldn't stop thinking about her? That he was a guy with calloused hands and scuffed boots who didn't belong in a world where art hung on walls and wine racks had climate control? On Friday afternoon, a second message arrived. Smoked turkey club still on the menu. Tomorrow, noon. I'll drive. She didn't ask. She invited, bold and direct, like before. Jamal stood in the supply aisle at Bailey's Hardware, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the smell of cut wood and oil thick around him. Everything solid, grounded. He typed, "Okay," drop a pin, and hit send before he could second-guess it. Saturday came too fast. Jamal waited outside the small hardware store off 4th Street, dressed in a crisp gray button-up and dark jeans. Not formal, not casual, just presentable. The Carolina sun burned high but mild. He adjusted his collar, wiped nervous sweat from his palms, and waited. At 12:02, a silver Audi A7 glided into the lot, sleek, quiet, polished. Lila stepped out, barefoot again, in a flowy blue dress. Not the same as before, but close. Her hair was pinned up, soft strands framing her cheeks. Jamal straightened. "You always go barefoot." She laughed. "Only when I'm keeping it real." They drove out of the city, past brick storefronts and weathered neighborhoods, toward the hills. No music played, just the soft rush of wind through a cracked window. They passed old churches, a faded barn, a lone yellow school bus parked in an empty lot. "I know a spot," Lila said. "Not fancy, but peaceful." 20 minutes later, they pulled off a gravel road into a wide clearing nestled among tall pines. A narrow river shimmered beyond the trees, and a picnic table sat under an old oak shade, alone. Jamal stepped out first, scanning the space like he was checking a circuit, cautious, quiet, observant. Lila grabbed a brown paper bag from the back seat and walked ahead, her toes brushing the grass. They sat for a long time, unwrapping sandwiches, turkey, cranberry aioli, toasted sourdough. She was right, it was good. Finally, Lila spoke. "Do you think I'm weird?" Jamal looked at her, surprised. "What?" "I mean, I just invited a stranger to lunch, drove him to the woods, barefoot." He smiled. "You're not weird. You're unexpected." She tilted her head. "Is that a compliment?" "It is if you've spent your life being overlooked." That quieted her for a moment. Then, softly, "I don't overlook people. I notice." They sat in silence again, but this time it felt lighter, like a bridge had started to form. Not sturdy yet, but real. Lila set her sandwich down, dusted her fingers. "I used to come here as a kid. My grandmother brought me. She said the river's sound could wash away what people pile on you." Jamal nodded, watching the water glide over stones. "Smart woman." She was. "Raised me more than my parents did." He didn't pry, just let the quiet answer. After a while, Lila leaned back, eyes closed, face to the sky. "You know what I like about you? I'm cheap labor." She chuckled. "No, you don't ask about my house, my car, or what I do. You don't seem impressed. I was taught not to covet what isn't mine." She opened her eyes. "And what if it is?" Jamal met her gaze but didn't reply, not because he lacked a thought, but because her question wasn't about possession. It was about value. The light shifted, the air cooled, a breeze stirring the oak branches above. I should go, Jamal said softly. Lila didn't move. Will you? He stood slowly, brushing crumbs from his jeans. Not if you ask me to stay. She smiled, small but sure. Then stay. So he did. They lingered under that tree until the shadows stretched long and the air turned cold. They talked about nothing. Favorite snacks, terrible clients, childhood scrapes. It wasn't romantic, wasn't rehearsed. It was honest. For a man who'd spent his adult life hiding behind tools and schedules, it felt like the start of something he hadn't known he needed. That night, Jamal didn't head home right away. He drove aimlessly, past the diner his mother used to clean, the corner where he got jumped at 15, the high school where no one knew his name. Eventually, he parked in the small lot behind his apartment and killed the engine. His phone buzzed. Lila, next time, you bring the sandwiches. He smiled, just a little, and for the first time in years, Jamal Hayes let himself hope. The next week dragged like wet cement. Jamal buried himself in work. Outlet swaps, breaker resets, a full day rewiring a ranch house in Monroe. But even the busiest days couldn't mute Lila's voice in his head. You don't seem impressed. And what if it does? He replayed those words more than he'd admit. Not for the words themselves, but for how she said them. Calm, challenging, like someone used to being seen through, not seen. Wednesday afternoon, while replacing a faulty junction box in a downtown duplex, his phone buzzed. Lila, you free Friday night? His reply came faster than he expected. What's the plan? Lila, dinner. My place. Nothing fancy. Jamal, tools or wine. Lila, just you. Maybe lose the boots. He smirked. Too late. They were already on. Friday arrived, and with it, nerves. Jamal stood at her front door. Same sleek wood, same brushed nickel handle. But this time, it wasn't a job. He wasn't here to fix anything. He rang the bell. The door opened slowly, and there was Lila Bennett, in a soft cardigan and leggings, barefoot again, hair loosely pinned, no makeup, no polish, just her. Hey, she said. Evening. Jamal replied, holding up a brown bag. Brought honey cornbread. Store-bought, but I warmed it. That's the most southern thing I've heard all week. Come in. The house smelled of roasted rosemary and garlic. Warmth, not wealth. Jamal followed her to the kitchen, where two plates sat on the island, candles flickering, a soft R&B playlist humming low. Hope you like salmon, she said, setting down a tray of glazed fillets and roasted vegetables. I like food I don't have to cook, so yeah. They ate slowly, talked freely. Work, childhood, annoying neighbors, worst dates. Jamal shared a story about getting stuck in a crawl space for 3 hours in July. She laughed so hard she choked on asparagus. At one point, she leaned on the counter, chin in hand. You have a quiet way of carrying weight. Jamal raised a brow. That a compliment? It is. You don't demand presence, you just have it. He didn't know how to respond, so he didn't, but something in his chest shifted. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Lila curled into one end of her oversized couch. Jamal sat at the other, unsure of the rules, unsure if there were any. She looked over. You don't have to be so polite. I wasn't raised to slouch in a woman's house. She rolled her eyes. You're allowed to be comfortable. Especially here. That's when it changed. The space between them didn't feel like air anymore. It felt like gravity. Then she spoke, softly breaking the moment. You ever wonder what people say about us? Us. You, me, this. She gestured vaguely around the room, heavy with meaning. Jamal exhaled. Probably a lot. Probably none of it good. Lila nodded, staring out the window. My world's loud, not just in sound, but in noise. Appearances, expectations, impressions. You don't slip through it unnoticed. I don't aim to, Jamal said. But I don't ask permission either. She looked back at him. That's what scares them. He held her gaze. What about you? I don't scare easy. Later, she walked him to the door. No kiss, no lingering touch, just a quiet moment under the porch light. Thanks for coming, she said. Thanks for the food. As he stepped down, she added, you still owe me sandwiches. He glanced back. Next time, I'll toast them. She smiled, then closed the door slowly. The next morning, Jamal sat at a diner near his apartment. A few regulars nodded as he took a window seat, ordered black coffee and grits, and opened his phone. A photo from Lila lit up the screen. A blurry, crayon-drawn sandwich, childlike and absurd. Caption, visual inspiration. Get it right. He laughed into his coffee. But as the waitress refilled his cup, a man in the booth behind him muttered, too loudly, that the guy with the rich white woman on Instagram? Jamal froze. Another voice, a chuckle. He's just her project. He didn't turn, didn't speak, but he felt it. The shift, the line, the reminder that not everyone was rooting for them. He pocketed his phone and stared out the window, suddenly unsure if last night's warmth could withstand the cold outside. Monday hit like it always did. Early, loud, relentless. Jamal drowned himself in work. A shorted kitchen panel in Matthews, a busted breaker in Dilworth, a strange hum in an old Baptist church off Beatty's Ford Road. Each job was a reason not to think, a distraction from the voice in his head. He's just her project. It wasn't the words that stung most. It was the ease of them. The assumption he didn't belong in her orbit. Tuesday morning, his boss at Hayes & Sons Electric pulled him aside before dispatch. Jamal, he said, arms folded. You know why the Simons account pulled out? Jamal blinked. No, sir. I haven't worked their property in weeks. Yeah, well, they mentioned public image. Said they saw something online. You do anything I should know about? The question wasn't cruel, just careful, but it cut. No, Jamal said, jaw tight. I've done nothing but my job. The boss nodded. All right, let's keep it that way. That night, Jamal didn't sleep. He sat on his bed's edge, phone in hand, thumb over Lila's contact. He could tell her about the account, the comments, the weight creeping back into his chest. But he didn't, not yet. Wednesday evening, Lila called first. You free? Her voice was low, warm. Define free. I'm in my driveway with 2 milkshakes and no one to share them with. He smiled despite himself. You bought 2 on purpose, didn't you? No comment. Come over. Be there in 15. When he arrived, she was on the front steps, legs tucked under her, sipping from a paper cup with whipped cream. She handed him the other. Chocolate peanut butter, she said. Figured you're a classic. He sat beside her, taking the cup. You figured right. They drank in silence, the wind whistling through the trees lining her yard. Then Lila shifted. I need to ask you something. Jamal nodded. Okay. Did someone say something to you? He hesitated. Why? Because something's different. You're here, but part of you's pulled back. He stared at the milkshake. Heard something at a diner. Some guy called me your project. Lila exhaled, long and slow. I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize for what people say. I do when they say it because of me. He turned to her. It's not your fault I don't fit their world. You fit mine, she said, voice firm. And that's the only one I care about. A beat passed, then another. I lost a client, Jamal said. Simon's estate pulled out after that video of us got posted. Lila stiffened. What video? Someone snapped us at the park. It spread. Damn it. She whispered, standing to pace. I'm so sick of this. Sick of what? Of people deciding what's okay, who I can be with, who you get to be. It's exhausting. Jamal stood slowly. Then maybe we take a break. The words landed like a fist. Lila turned. What? Not from each other. From the noise. You think that'll help? I think if I don't breathe, I'll choke. She stared at him, eyes not pleading but hurting. Okay, she said softly. If that's what you need. It's not forever. I know. They stood in silence, two people caught between care and caution. Then Lila stepped forward, placing her palm on his chest. You're not a project, Jamal Hayes. I know you're not small, not temporary, not a symbol or a rebellion or a mistake. He looked at her, eyes glassy. Then why does it feel like I'm always fighting to prove it? She didn't answer with words, just leaned in, resting her forehead against his. For a moment, neither moved. When he left, the porch light stayed on longer than usual, and Jamal knew the real fight was just beginning. Rain fell steadily that Thursday, coating Charlotte's streets in silver. Jamal sat in his truck outside his apartment, wipers off, engine quiet. He hadn't moved in 15 minutes. It had been a week since the milkshake on Lila's porch, 5 days since he'd asked for space, for nights of restless sleep, 3 missed calls from her, and 1 growing regret. The silence hadn't brought peace, only clarity. He missed her, the way she said his name like it carried weight, the way she saw past his uniform to the man beneath, the feeling of being seen, not judged. Jamal reached for his phone. He didn't call or text. He drove. Lila's house looked the same. Wide porch, warm lights, wind chimes swaying. But it felt quieter. No music, no shadows behind the curtains. He almost didn't knock, but he did. Seconds later, the door opened. Lila stood in an oversized hoodie, sleeves pushed up, a paint smudge on her wrist. No surprise in her face, just something softer, worn. Hey, he said. Hey, I was in the area. She raised an eyebrow. You came from 4th Street. He smiled. Okay, I lied. She stepped aside. You coming in or checking the weather? Inside, the air smelled of acrylic and coffee. Canvases leaned against walls. One sat on an easel, half finished. A storm in blues and charcoal, like a city sinking into the sea. Yours? Jamal asked, nodding at it. Therapy. He stepped closer. You ever show these? No. They're just for me. He studied the strokes. Raw, chaotic, honest. They look like they've been waiting a long time to exist. Lila didn't reply. She sat by the window, hugging her knees. When I was 14, a teacher said I had talent, but told me not to waste it on urban angst. Her words. Jamal sat across from her. My guidance counselor told me to aim for electrician because college might frustrate me. They laughed, but it was hollow. I didn't come to dig up the past, Jamal said quietly. Then why? He paused. Because I don't want to be the guy who walks away when it gets hard. And because I realize this isn't noise. Lila tilted her head. Then what is it? It's real, and rare, and terrifying. A pause, then she whispered, same. They sat in the dim light, rain tapping the windows. Finally, Lila said, there's something I should show you. She grabbed a folder from a bookshelf and handed it to him. Inside were printouts, screenshots, social media comments, blog posts. Some had photos of them at the park, others of Jamal outside her house. He flipped through slowly. Some were mocking, others cruel, all invasive. I didn't want to show you earlier, she said. You were carrying enough. He closed the folder. How long has this been going on? Since the park. Someone at that party recognized you. It spiraled. His jaw tightened. They know where you live. She nodded. I upgraded the cameras, got a security company on call. You should have told me. I didn't want to scare you off. You think I scare easy? She gave him a look. You asked for space, Jamal. I thought you were gone. He exhaled, staring at his hands. I thought space would protect us. But it just showed me there's no safe distance from this. From them. No, Lila agreed. But there's strength in being close. He looked at her, eyes steady. I'm here, and I'm not hiding. She moved closer, their knees brushing. I can't promise it'll get easier. I don't want easier. I want truth. And what do you want it to look like? He thought for a moment. I want to build something. With you. With us. She reached out, fingers lacing with his. Then let's start now. That night, they sat on the couch, watching the storm outside. No music, no wine, just shared silence. Lila rested her head on his shoulder. You know, I've been called a lot. Too bold, too cold, too much. He kissed her temple. They missed the best one. What's that? Mine. She smiled, soft and certain. In that small room, lit only by street lamps and their shared honesty, the line between fear and courage blurred and vanished. 2 months passed, not in a rush, but in a quiet, deliberate unfolding. Sunday mornings became their ritual. Jamal brought breakfast, still warm from the diner, and Lila brewed coffee in her French press, swearing it tasted more alive. They'd sit by her studio window, knees touching, sun spilling over them like a slow river. The noise hadn't stopped. Online whispers, hissed rumors, but Jamal tuned it out. They were building something, and it was theirs. One Sunday, toast still on the plate, Lila turned to him. I have an idea. He smiled. That usually ends with paint or trouble. This time both. Sort of. She handed him a tablet. On the screen was a website mock-up. Hazeworks, a logo with a bolt and fist, and a tagline. Built with hands, driven by heart. Jamal blinked. Is this real? I worked on it in my spare time, branding, copy, visuals. You said you wanted to go independent, so I made a blueprint. He stared, stunned. You did all this? Every color, every word, even the fonts. You're a Georgia man. Trust me. He was quiet for a long beat. Why? She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Because when I see something good, I don't wait for someone else to validate it. I invest. You don't think it's too soon? Too soon for what? Your dream? Your name on your own work. His chest tightened. Not painful, just full. What do you want from me? He asked, not from doubt but honesty. She met his eyes. I want to build something with you. Not for you. Not around you. With you. By week's end, Jamal filed for a business license. Lila helped design flyers. They printed the first batch together at a local shop. On Saturday, they walked neighborhoods, taping flyers to light poles, slipping them into mailboxes. An older man with a cane squinted at one. You Hayes? I am. He nodded. Good hands matter. My son hired some tech who couldn't tell a wire from spaghetti. I'll call you. Jamal grinned all the way down the block. But resistance always comes. It arrived the next Friday at a South Charlotte colonial, ivy-wrapped pillars and all. The job was simple: assess a faulty bathroom circuit. Jamal rang the bell. A woman in a sharp suit answered, eyeing his uniform. You're from Hayes Works? Yes, ma'am. Jamal Hayes. Her eyes narrowed. You were on that blog with Lila Bennett. He didn't respond. She crossed her arms. She's a friend of my husband's firm. You think this little stunt of yours will last? His voice stayed steady. Honest work lasts longer than gossip. She let him in, but made a call within earshot. Jamal heard her. Yes, he's here. I told you she's playing some game. He didn't flinch. He fixed the circuit, wrote the invoice, left without a word. In his truck, windows down, spring air cooling his face, his phone buzzed. Lila, lunch at the shop? Jamal, on my way. Bring your paint hands. They met at her rented design space, a converted brick storefront. Her smaller paintings hung on the back wall. The front counter had 2 stools and a chalkboard sign reading closed in cursive. He told her about the job. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't explode. Instead, she flipped over a canvas. Painted this 2 years ago, after my ex-fiancé said I wasn't relatable enough for his clients. It was a black and white swirl of tangled lines, broken shapes stitched with gold thread. I almost destroyed it, she said. Then I realized broken doesn't mean disposable. She turned to him. You're not a phase, Jamal. Not a scandal. Not something people get to whisper about until the next news cycle. He stepped forward. And you're not my savior or my shield. I don't want to be. I want to be your damn partner. He smiled, pulled her close. Then let's keep building. Weeks turned to months. Hayes' works grew, slow, steady word of mouth. Jamal trained 2 apprentices from the neighborhood. Lila launched a small design studio in the same space. They hosted monthly community fix-it days, free repairs for seniors, single parents, veterans. The whispers didn't stop, but neither did they. They'd built something, not just a business, but a bridge, a blueprint, a quiet rebellion against the world's no. Every time Jamal passed the old bench in her studio, the one she never painted over, he remembered her words. You're not small. You're not temporary. And every time she watched him work, hands healing wires, heart asking only for honesty, she knew he'd always been enough, not because he fit, but because he stood. It started with an unexpected call. Monday morning, the sun still below the skyline. Jamal's phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. He almost ignored it, but something nudged him. Mr. Hayes, a woman asked. Elaine Harper, estate manager for the Vaughn family. We need an urgent repair at their Myers Park property. Can you consult today? Jamal sat up straighter. The Vaughns were old money, their name etched in real estate lore. I can be there by 11. Thank you. Address is on your screen. The call ended, and Jamal stared at the text. Something felt off, but Hayes Works couldn't afford to turn down legacy clients. At 10:55, he pulled into a gated drive. The house was grand. White columns, terrace lawn, a garage bigger than most homes. A woman in her 60s, dressed in a gray suit and pearls, met him. Thank you for coming, she said briskly. The issue's in the upstairs sunroom. Chandelier shorts out when it rains. 3 techs couldn't fix it. I'll do my best, ma'am. He followed her upstairs, toolkit in hand, boots quiet on polished oak. The chandelier was antique, French, wiring delicate. He worked silently, testing voltage, tracing faults. Then a voice behind him. Well, this is unexpected. Jamal turned. Nathan Pierce, partner at Langford and Pierce Law, City Historical Council board member, and Lila's ex-fiancé, stood in the doorway. They locked eyes for a tense moment. Didn't know you moonlighted as an electrician, Nathan said coolly. I own the business, Jamal replied, tone even. Nathan stepped in, arms crossed. Lila always liked unconventional projects. Jamal didn't blink. I'm not her project. No? Then what? Her rebellion? A message to her father? You're temporary, Hayes. You know that, right? Jamal's jaw clenched, but his hands stayed steady. He clipped a frayed wire, replaced a corroded connector. I build things that last, including myself. Nathan chuckled. Let's see how long that lasts when the novelty fades. He walked out. Jamal finished the job in silence. Downstairs, Mrs. Vaughn handed him a signed check. You're efficient, she said, smiling. Better than the last team. I'll call again. Thank you, ma'am. Outside, the afternoon light was blinding. Nathan's words echoed but didn't burn. They didn't shake him like they might have a year ago. They sparked something else, resolve. That night, Lila found him in the studio, staring at one of her newer canvases, black strokes on a red wash. You okay? She asked. He turned slowly. Nathan was at the Vaughn house. Her eyes narrowed. What did he say? Enough. She crossed her arms. You want me to handle it? No, but I want to ask you something. She waited. If it came down to your world or mine, what would you choose? She didn't answer right away, just sat on the bench, thinking. I don't think I should have to choose. But if they draw a line, I'll burn it down. He stepped closer. They already drew it. Then let's build on the ashes. 2 days later, Lila sent an open letter to the Charlotte Ledger, a respected outlet for local leaders and creatives. Titled When We Love Outside the Lines, it didn't name names, but didn't need to. The message was clear, fierce. Some see what I've built with Jamal Hayes as rebellion. Rebellion implies destruction. We're constructing equity, presence, partnership. If that makes people uncomfortable, they should ask why. By noon, it had been shared over 2,000 times. Jamal didn't post or comment, but his inbox filled with support, inquiries, opportunity. One message stood out from Elaine Harper. The Vaughns would like to cancel future services with Hayes Works. No explanation. He replied, "Noted. Thank you." Then he turned to Lila, who was brushing color onto a new canvas. "We lost a client." She looked up, unbothered. "We'll gain 10 more." That night, on the studio's rooftop, overlooking the city they were reshaping with every choice, Jamal took her hand. "Nathan said I'm temporary." She leaned into him. "Then let's outlast him." Spring hit hard, rain lashing Charlotte for 5 days, flooding streets, knocking out power. Jamal barely slept, taking back-to-back emergency calls, seniors without lights, single moms with dead fridges, apartment managers begging for panel resets. His boots steamed from wet carpets, his back ached, but on the 6th day, the storm hit differently. A message from Trey, one of his apprentices. "Boss, you see the article?" Jamal frowned. "What article?" Then his phone buzzed. 3 numbers, same headline. Community hero or social climber. The rise of Hayes Works under Lila Bennett's wing. A conservative blog smear piece. It twisted old photos. Lila's letter, their story, him chasing wealth, her flaunting wokeness. A grainy photo showed him beside an elderly black woman at a job site, captioned, "Marketing or manipulation?" His stomach churned. He didn't finish the article, just grabbed his keys and drove. Lila was in the back studio, paint on her cheek, wearing his hoodie. She saw his face. "It's out, isn't it?" He nodded. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You didn't write it. But I made it possible by putting us in the light." Jamal ran his hands over his face. "They didn't come for us. They came for me. Turned everything we built into a punchline." "No," Lila said, standing. "They tried. We're still standing. They're dragging my name now. I can survive that." He looked at her, pain behind tired eyes. "But can we survive this?" Silence. Then, "Do you want to stop?" It wasn't a threat or fear, just permission. Jamal sat beside her, elbows on knees. "I used to think I could outwork judgment. Be good enough, useful enough, they'd let me in the room. I was wrong. They don't care what I fix, they care what I represent." She sat beside him. "And what do you represent?" He looked at her. "Disruption." She laughed softly. "You're not the only one." They sat, shoulder to shoulder, storm tapping the windows. Her phone buzzed. She glanced, then handed it to him. An email from an NPR Charlotte producer. "We'd love to interview you both." Jamal stared. "You think this helps?" Lila just smiled. The interview aired the next week, a 15-minute segment on resilience and partnership. Jamal spoke plainly, hands folded. "I'm not here for headlines. I want to build things that don't collapse in storms." I found someone with the same blueprint. When the host asked Lila what it meant to build with someone from a different world, she said, "We build with what we have." He brought hands. I brought the room. The backlash didn't vanish, but support flooded in. Church groups, business owners, elderly clients with handwritten notes, a woman whose son cried listening to the interview. The blog tried a second piece, but it flopped. The narrative had shifted because they didn't break. They told their own story. One night, Jamal stood on Lila's porch, where she'd once offered a milkshake and a question. "You scared?" she asked. He looked at the quiet street, the studio's light glowing down the block. "Yeah," he said, then added, but not of them anymore. She stepped beside him. What then? Of how much I care. About this, you, all of it. She rested her hand on his chest. That's not fear, Jamal. What is it? Wait. The kind worth carrying. Autumn came softly. No fanfare. Just thinning air and golden leaves piling at curbs. Hazeworks grew, not in leaps, but roots, slow and deep. Calls came steadily, not from billboards but trust in Jamal's name, his work, his word. He still took every job himself, still showed up clean shirt, still said yes ma'am or no sir to clients half his age. But now, people didn't look at him like a stranger, they saw the guy who stayed. One Thursday, Jamal stood outside a modest two-story on Belmont Avenue. It wasn't grand, white siding, red door, cracked driveway, but it was theirs. He unlocked the door, stepped inside. The floors creaked, walls smelled of primer, but sunlight poured through bay windows, landing like a promise. 2 mugs sat on the counter, his and Lila's, next to a stack of paint swatches labeled dining room palette. She was in the back, barefoot, crouched before a blank wall, pencil in hand, a faint line traced across the drywall. What are you doing? Jamal asked. Planning. For, she turned, eyes bright. A mural. Of what? Not sure yet. But I think it starts with hands. He smiled, kissed her temple. This still feels wild. What does? You, me here, together. Still standing. She turned, serious. It's not wild. It's earned. They stood in the quiet hum of a house beginning its first chapter. 2 weeks later, they dedicated the shop, a converted storefront split between tools and canvases. One side held electrical diagrams, the other brushes and community tables for neighborhood kids on Saturdays. The front door bore a sign, the Bennett and Hayes Studio. People came, clients, friends, neighbors, teachers, even Trey's grandmother with lemon pound cake. Near the end, Lila took the mic. No script, no notes. There's a difference between being given something and being trusted to build it. This space didn't fall into our laps. We laid every plank, screwed every hinge, painted every corner, knowing the world would ask us to choose between love and peace, truth and safety. We chose each other, and we'll keep choosing. Jamal stepped forward, looking at the crowd. Elders wiping eyes, kids spinning in leaves, Lila watching him like he held a future worth defending. I used to think I'd only ever own a toolbox, he said. Turns out, I get to own something heavier. He paused. Hope. The room stilled, then clapped. Not loud, but real. That night, on their porch, wrapped in one blanket, watching the wind pull gold from the trees, Jamal whispered, I still can't believe it. Lila leaned into him. Then let me remind you, she said. We didn't just survive. We built. Under the autumn sky, in a city that once drew lines between them, 2 people stood, unshaken, unbought, unbroken. They hadn't just rewritten the story. They'd reclaimed it.